I want to jump right into this because we've got kind of this gospel lesson is just absolutely packed with stuff going on. And right off the bat, we hear that the Pharisees, and if we remember, the Pharisees are the religious leaders. They're the pastors of the day, are trying to set a trap for Jesus. All right. So what do they ask him about? What are they asking him about? Paying taxes, okay? And we all know, living where we do right now in the 24-hour news cycle, what are taxes really about?
Getting a refund.
Basically.
Getting a refund.
Getting a refund. We hope.
Yeah,
all right, but what they're a function of politics, right? And so we have. We know that when somebody starts talking about taxes and about how much we pay in taxes, who we pay in taxes, we know that we're really talking about politics. And who here has ever seen a discussion about politics turn ugly before? Anybody? Just a few of us. And the Pharisees, these guys, coming in to trap Jesus, they're actually hoping that it gets ugly. And they're trying everything that they can do to set Jesus up. All right? And just how desperate they are is by who they pick to be their partners in crime. All right? Who do they pick up? Who's this weird group that joins them? The Herodians. All right? And these two groups hated each other. All right? They really disliked each other, but they figured out that they hated Jesus more. So they decided to work together. All right? And the Pharisees were the religious guys, and they tended to be on the same side as the common people. All right? The Herodians were the collaborators. All right? They were the people that the Romans put in charge to oppress people for them. All right? Israel was occupied by Rome, and Rome needed local support, like people who knew the ground, knew the religion, to help rule the Jewish people. And that's who the Herodians were. So they really didn't like each other. They were rich and privileged, and they helped to oppress their own people. And again, they worked together because both sides saw Jesus as a threat to their power and their position. The Pharisees are seeing more and more of the common people starting to follow Jesus rather than following them. I mean, it'd be sort of like if some guy, some lady set up a tent out in our parking lot, and all of a sudden I started seeing, 10 people out there, 20 people out there, and all of a sudden, we start to get concerned about, well, what am I doing wrong? Wait a second here, that's not fair. And the Herodians depended on life in Israel being peaceful and quiet in order to keep their privileged position. And Jesus is stirring people up, and they're worried that there's going to be a revolt against Rome, and then they're going to get, because the Romans will say, well, you didn't do your job, we'll find somebody else to do your job. So the Pharisees and the Herodians team up because they both dislike Jesus, and they set this trap. And this question that he asks them, is it lawful to pay taxes, is a lose-lose question. All right? Because if Jesus says that it's lawful to pay taxes to the Roman emperor, that's not going to make the ordinary poor people who are being oppressed by the Romans very happy. All right? So Jesus will make them mad. If Jesus says that people shouldn't pay taxes, the Herodians, the collaborators, will go to Rome and say, this guy's stirring up rebellion, let's crucify him. All right? So these are the choices that Jesus has to make this morning. This is the trap that's set for him. Either he says that oppressing and cheating poor people is okay, or he gets killed for challenging Rome. All right, those are his two options. I don't know about you, but this suddenly makes Cousin Eddie bringing up President Obama at Thanksgiving dinner sound a pretty tame. All right, so Jesus' choices don't look good. Does this still happen today? Do people, do we, do you, do I still seek to discredit and diminish people who hold different political opinions than ourselves, or hold different religious beliefs than ourselves, or different stands on social issues? Do we still seek to discredit people? And I mean, I would argue that it does, and I think it shows up in our language. How many people have watched a debate between political people, and afterwards they'll say, "Oh, so-and-so destroyed that other person. They really got him." Or I've heard people say, I made that other kid look foolish in class for what they said. Has winning a debate or an argument become our end goal? Have our lives become focused on us versus them? You know, it could be Republicans versus Democrats. It could be Christians versus Muslims. It could be gun rights versus gun control. Have we forgotten that the other political party is made up of people? Have we forgot that different churches, different denominations, different faiths are made up of people? That on each opposing side of a social issue are people. My dad told me a story one time. He was in the Air Force during the Vietnam era, and he was at a radar station. And one night, one of his fellow soldiers came up to him and said, "You know, let's argue about religion. You know, I know that you know some stuff, and I know some stuff, and let's argue about it." And my dad said, "I'm happy to discuss religion with you, but I won't argue it with you. If we argue," he said, "you're not going to change your mind. I'm not going to change my mind. But if we discuss, maybe we'll learn something from each other or about each other." And I wonder if this is how Jesus gets out of this trap that's laid for him by the Pharisees and the Herodians. And I think it might be significant. It might come down to how they leave. What does it say? What does it say that they leave like? It says something very specific at the end. They were amazed. In verse 22, it doesn't say that they were crushed, that they were defeated, humiliated, but that they were amazed. Consider for a moment times and events in your life that amazed you. Usually I'm amazed when I learn something new, or I realize that something that I thought was impossible is possible. Is it possible that despite the odds, both these Pharisees and these Herodians learned something from their encounter with Jesus? What if Jesus reminds the Pharisees, the Herodians, you and me, and the entire world who we truly are? For a moment, we realize that it can't be about winning and losing, or us versus them. Jesus manages both to avoid the trap and amaze his opponents by reflecting on images. He asked for a coin, okay? And one of the things I wonder about is, how does Jesus hold the coin? You know, I mean, I'm fascinated by that. Does he hold it kind of like a dead animal? You know, does he hold it like worthless as a rock? I don't know, but I think that's interesting. And he says, whose image is on this coin? And they say, the emperor's. All right? And Jesus says, give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. If the image on something determines who it belongs to, what belongs to God? If the image on something determines who it belongs to, what belongs to God?
Everything else.
Everything we do. Yeah, I mean, all right, so this is one of the cool things. In Genesis, as we hear, remember Genesis, God creates humans in whose image? God's image, yeah. We reflect God's image. So each one of us bears God's image. And what if Jesus is reminding us this? What if Jesus is reminding us who we really are? And what if instead of, and even maybe more important and more challenging. Maybe Jesus is reminding us that those around us, our opponents, our rivals, our threats, what if they too are made in the image of God? What if they too are children of God? Could this change how we live and how we act? Could we denigrate whole groups of people as evil or dumb or worthless if we recognize the truth that all reflect the image of God that creates us? What would it look like if before we saw skin color, before we saw nationality, before we saw political beliefs or economic status, we realized people's primary identity as child of God? It's one of the reasons why I like working with kids. Kids are like that. They have that vision. I remember I was working at a Lutheran camp, and one of the kids was trying to point out another kid, and they're like, "It's the one, with the red sweatshirt on." He's the only black kid in camp. We're Lutherans, what I mean? And yet this kid didn't see skin color. He saw, he just saw another kid. What if that's how we could all see? We live in a time where politics has been dumbed down to sound bites and litmus tests. Many people view the world in black and white terms, good versus evil. Listening, discussion, and learning seem to be at an all-time low. So I want to ask us, what if Jesus means what Jesus says? We are to give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and God what is God's. And again, if all of us belong to God, could that make the world change? If we realize that we all belong to the same God? What if we realize that how we spend our money reflects who we serve? What if we realize that how we act on a sports field reflects our God? How we treat other kids at school reflects our God. How we interact with our government reflects our God. How we live out our sexuality reflects our God. All of our lives, all of it, are called to be a reflection of our faith in God and our love for our neighbors. I wonder if the first step is to find a place where people with different beliefs, different ideas, and different opinions can have an honest discussion and dialogue with another. And I wonder if church could be that place. How often do we say, what are the things you don't talk about with family, in polite company? Religion, politics, money, all those things. But I wonder if maybe we should be talking about those things. Could church be a place where we don't all agree, and yet we remain in relationship with one another? Because the image of God is stronger than the image of any political party or religious or conviction or social issue. And I want to end this sermon with a challenge for you to challenge me. All right? Because it's easy to preach and teach safe stuff. All right? It's not real hard to talk about God's love and God's forgiveness for everybody. That's a pretty safe topic. But maybe there are topics out there that you wonder about. And in your pews today, I put in some index cards. And if you want to use those, what I would ask is that you would take it and look at it and write down a question that you wish that church would talk about. Something that you wish would come up in sermons. And it can be about money, it can be about life, it can be about anything. All right? And maybe with the grace of God, we can have the opportunity to leave our church services, to leave our Bible studies, to leave our Sunday schools amazed by what we learned from someone we mistook as an enemy. Thanks be to God. Amen.